Well, here we are back at the fireside. I keep thinking that oh, this is the last night that we'll need a fire. And then I forget that Wyoming, when it comes to Wyoming, winter is really not as eager to flee as it sometimes appears when we get that first sunny day in February, when it gets up into the 50s, and we're like, spring's here.
Yeah.
It's like, no, spring's flirting with us. It's going back.
It's playing hard to get.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
So, but who is back here in Lander? Madeleine Trull, theater
Maker.
theater maker, director extraordinaire, uh, former director of admissions at Wyoming Catholic College, and currently doing some really amazing work out on the West Coast in children's theater. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so I work for Missoula Children's Theater, which is a children's theater based out of Missoula, Montana. So about 8 hours from where we are in Lander, Wyoming. And they've been doing this for 50 years. So they're all over the US and in 7 countries. And they send pairs of what they call TADs, which are abbreviated to be touring actors and directors. So I'm a TAD. And our job is to get in these little red trucks that are like apple red with Missoula Children's Theater emblazoned on them. And we basically travel around. My region is California. So I've been traveling up and down mainly the Central Valley, doing excursions into Oregon, and we'll be doing excursions into New Mexico. And basically, we go to schools and communities and we put on a play in a week. So we do auditions, rehearsals, performances, teach them life skills, and do it all in a week. Pack up, move on.
And on to the next city.
Wow.
Who are you working with? So kids,
Yes.
elementary, middle school.
We do from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, but the most common we see is elementary, middle.
Okay.
So it'd be mostly like kindergartners up through 6th grade, sometimes 7th and 8th graders. Rarely we have high schoolers, but when we do, we're very excited. We're like, yes, all right, we got some high schoolers, which we did last week. So that was nice.
Okay. And you're always doing the same play?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. That probably helps.
Yes.
So how many plays have you put on in the last like 4 months? Well, three.
Well, so
Three,
with Missoula Children?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 3 months you've been doing this project, right?
Yeah, well, we started the second week of January, which was funny because we had a first week where we did a show, and then we had an unbooked week, which is where you just don't have a residency. So you're kind of just bopping around for a week. So we've been out for 10 weeks so far. We've done 9 shows. So we've been to 9 different communities and done Treasure Island 9 times with these kids. So it's a lot of fun.
That sounds like a lot of
It is so much fun. And it's funny because a lot of
You getting burned out on Treasure Island?
no.
Okay.
The crazy thing is that
All right, walk me through that.
well, okay, so a parent asked me that at our last residency in Oroville, California. They were like, "You do this show every single week?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "Don't you get tired of it?" It's like, "No, actually, because every cast is different.
Right.
And every kid brings something entirely different to whatever role they're playing. Like we've had 9 Jim Hawkins, and
Okay.
every kid has brought like maybe one kid's more like wide-eyed and like, oh, whoa, pirates, and one kid's maybe a little bit more adventurous and he takes it a different direction. The pirates are all different, the ruffians are all different. And it's cool to see kids take characters different, but also grow in different ways. So you see kids come out of their shells, you see kids get challenged. And so, I mean, I've not grown tired of it. And now the songs and all of the like lines are like what me and my tour partner, like how we talk to each other now. Cause like when something is hard, we like turn to each other and like, but if we all work together, we can all be friends. And like we just quote things to each other. And so it's become like a language and a culture of its own. So
Okay.
it's actually not bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's the best we can hope for in many endeavors in life. It's not bad. Pretty good. So that's something I've been really curious to talk to you about. And I do want to circle back to some of the more specifics of what this project, but in a larger way, I've been curious for a long time. Theater, I remember reading a lot of Shakespeare in high school, right? And reading it And I got through it. And we'd have book discussions and what have you. What, I mean, would you argue that all plays aren't really themselves until they're performed, right? I mean, can you read Shakespeare and really understand Shakespeare's intent? Or do you really have to see Shakespeare on stage?
I think Shakespeare is more readily understandable seen or listened to. So I think the best thing to do is to see a Shakespeare play first,
Okay.
read it aloud, and then read it, because you'll pick up different things when you do each different thing.
Yep.
And I think kind of the same thing can be said for every play, is
Okay.
like they're written and designed to be spoken.
Okay.
And when you read a play, it can have like some impact. Like I've read plays that have had a lot of impact, but I've also read a play, Endgame by Samuel Beckett, where like I read the play, I was freshman in college, and I read it for script analysis class and I hated it. Like, this is so dumb. What was the point of this? Because there was no stage directions and it was a lot of like really short, like boom, 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 boom dialogue. And I was like, no one talks like this. This is ridiculous. What's going on? There was 2 characters the whole time. I was like, ugh. But then in script analysis class, our professor kind of figured out we'd all dislike it. So what he did is in that class where he discussed it, he's like, before we talk about it, I want you to watch it.
Okay.
So he found like a professional version of it, and we pulled on the projector, we saw it. And I was completely converted to the fact that I love that play. And it's one of my favorite plays. And it's probably one of the seminal plays I think have changed my mindset in a lot of ways, like kind of kickstarted the maturity mindset and all of that. But it was that play that I initially hated reading and really appreciated watching. And yeah, and I've gone back to that author a few times and read more of his work, and it's really good.
That was Samuel Beckett.
Yeah, he's most well known for Waiting for Godot.
Okay.
That's the one that everyone reads, usually in high school. And everyone either loves it or hates it. It's been written about ad nauseum. And I had tried 3 times to read it. Every time I could never finish it.
You're on that side of the watershed, huh?
But I read it recently because I was like, I need to finish this. Because my younger brother really likes it, which I found kind of interesting. So I read it. And usually people say Waiting for Godot is like the seminal existentialist, like there's no meaning in life or anything like that. God is dead. There's no point, blah, blah, blah. But I read it and found it.
Sorry. So the seminal, nihilistic play?
Not nihilistic, but existentialist in the sense of like he was willing to maybe say like, should we be waiting for Godot? And a lot of people have interpreted Godot to be God, to be, I mean, they've interpreted it to be a lot of different things. The most popular one is God.
Okay.
But I read it, what was that? It's past October.
Okay.
And I thought it was extremely positive. Like I found an optimistic strain in it that I wasn't expecting and hadn't noticed 3 years, the 3 other times I've tried to read it. But I think it's because I've lived a little bit.
Okay.
And I think before you read that one, you need to read T.S. Eliot's Wasteland. You read T.S. Eliot's Wasteland, you read Waiting for Godot. I think they're in the same camp, and I think they're saying very similar things. And they really do like inform the other. So
forgive my ignorance. Were those men contemporaries?
Beckett and T.S. Beckett lived through, so he was Irish, lived in France, lived through World War II. Maybe. Yeah, probably. I think T.S. Eliot was probably a little older than Beckett, but because Wasteland's about World War II.
Okay.
Yeah, so probably.
Okay. So I just find this curious, right? When I think about art, my only real experiences in it are what I've written, what I've drawn, or what I've built, right? So it's like for me, really, frankly, all my artistic endeavors have been I've got something in my head and then I'm going to go make it, right? And maybe a construction project turns out really well, or maybe it turns out, or a writing project turns out rather poorly. But it's like very much for me, this process of like, it's in my head and I want to get what's in my head out into the real world in some sense. But it seems that you're very comfortable with theater in which the author and then the director and then all these people sort of have to trust each other to bring something to life. And it seems sometimes in a way that the author or the director didn't necessarily have in mind. So what's going on there? Can you unpack that a little bit? Because I find that absolutely terrifying to think that like, oh my God, someone's going to interpret my work. You know.
But I think that's like any writer, like when they write any of the classic books that you read at any of the great liberal arts colleges, like Dostoevsky or Shakespeare, even, they're interpreted in so many ways.
Okay.
And probably in ways that they did not intend. And like, it's very interesting because even with writers, the cool thing about writing and theater and just the arts in general is that it takes on a life of its own and it just like balloons into something else. And so I feel like it's not any different from a novel that people interpret it in many different ways. And like it hits them in different ways in different stages of their life because they see something different in it. So what's cool about theater is like you're taking a bunch of people from all stages of life and different experiences, and you're plopping them together with one text. So it's like when you get all together with your friends and you're talking about one story that you all know intimately well.
Okay.
Because everyone's probably read the play like a couple different times. They all have their different interpretation. Now, there's usually one person who's like, this is my vision. It's usually the director who's like, this is the goal. This is my interpretation.
Okay.
And everyone's kind of working to kind of create the vision of the show. But any good director is going to be collaborative.
Okay.
And if a designer is like, I get your vision, but like, what about this? This is what I saw in it.
Okay.
What if I did it this way? And so the vision, I think the strongest directors have a strong vision, but are like malleable. Like,
Okay.
so they can kind of incorporate different things in it, but still have a strong, like, this is what I want to say, but I'm not married to exactly these parameters.
Okay.
So yeah, I would think a good director is like strong vision, but is flexible and adaptable and is willing to hear all these different sides because like light can be used so well and costumes can be so good. But, you know, as a director, you're not like perfectly aware of everything in the costume room or in the lighting and what it's capable of. And some of the best plays have happened, like some of the best moments in plays that I've been in have happened when someone was like, can I try something? You're like, sure. And then it happens, you're like, oh my gosh.
Brilliant.
Like I was in The Miracle Worker, which is the Helen Keller story, and I was playing Annie Sullivan, and we had a really cool old-timey like water pump, because water and the pump is like really important for the play. And we were kind of resigned to the fact we were like all in high school and we are kind of resigned, it's not going to pump real water. We're going to have to imagine it. And during tech week, maybe Wednesday of tech week, we were opened on Friday. It was Wednesday of tech week. One of the dads was watching. He's very technical minded. He was watching. I think I can make that pump water. We're like, you can? He's like, yeah, I think I can. And he did. And it just like that moment in the show when you're pumping water and Helen Keller like recognizes it and starts to sign water into Annie Sullivan's hand was just magnified by the fact that we were in real water.
Your hands
we
were
like,
wet.
We're wet and it's splashing and like the audience is seeing it work. And it's just like, it was so good.
It just felt like the director had the humility to leave a little room for magic.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and you have to, because theater magic is real and it's amazing. Like, I do believe in magic in some sense.
Yeah. I mean, in that way, would you say that like theater has an element of trust that maybe some of the other arts don't quite require, right? Like you really just, because it occurs to me, if someone writes a novel, yes, they want it to be read, and by having someone read it, they're going to interpret it. But if you perform a play, it also has an audience, and they're going to interpret the performance that they see. But I mean, by having actors and backstage workers, they've had to interpret your work even before it's interpreted by
Mhm.
the audience. So there's that
Yeah.
intermediary step,
So many filters.
so many filters. And so a good part of the challenge of theater is you have to trust your cast and crew. Yeah.
Yeah, like the playwright has to trust the director to take care of it, and then the director has to like the directors can be kind of a tyrant during the rehearsal process and like can I mean I've worked I never want to be a tyrannical director, but I have worked with some
Uh-huh.
and I understand where they're coming from, but I don't think they get the best work, but you can be a tyrannical director. But once the show starts,
Mm,
once the run begins and opening night happens,
mm,
like there's no more electrifyingly helpless feeling when you are sitting in the audience and you're watching your show and you're like, okay, like
Uh-oh.
it's so cool because you watch and you see, oh, they didn't do that in rehearsal, but they did that there. That was new, cool. And you're just and it's like it's electrifying because you're seeing something new every single time. But it's also a helpless feeling because like you can't yell, cut, redo that.
Mm.
No, that broke, or it's kind of helpless because you're no longer in control, but you have to like give it over and you have to be vulnerable and trusting with your
mm,
cast and crew that you've led them well enough that they can take it on their own. It's kind of like an adult, like a parent.
mm.
Like, fly, little bird.
Yeah.
Like, now it's your turn. And when you do that and you're willing to be trustworthy and vulnerable with the cast and the crew, I think you get amazing work.
Okay.
But it is kind of like, okay. And you always go and check in on them on intermission. And if something really went wrong, like you can go back and be like, okay, for tomorrow, we should, before before the performance, we should run that little bit.
Uh,
So there are things you can do to tweak,
mm,
but you don't really want to. You kind of want it to let them. My one theater professor, he never gave notes after opening night. And one time I asked him, I was like, why don't you give notes? He's like, because it's not mine anymore. It's yours.
damn.
And I was like,
Mm.
oh,
That's powerful.
Mhm.
wow. And it was like, because I was in the show.
Mm.
I was part of the crew, but I was in the show. And that just floored me. I was like, oh, okay. Because you have more responsibility when you think about it like that. You're like,
Yeah. It's almost like he's entrusting you with his art. And then so if you've done like all the work to it, he's like,
mhm.
I have confidence that you will deliver the way that I hope you will. And you'll probably exceed my expectations in some level.
Yeah. And that's
Cool.
so like empowering is kind of an overused word, but that is a very empowering as a young artist to hear that, to be like, you trust me with
Mm.
this? Okay,
Mm.
cool. So
Gives you that little bit of, I don't know, heightened outlook about what you can do.
mhm.
Like, well, maybe I'm better than I think I am if he's trusting me with this, you know.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Exactly.
And I'll let that I guess like that hope you have of what you could do come out a little more.
Mhm. Well, it builds up your confidence too. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, if this person who I kind of idolize as a professor and like someone who's a professional actor and director, I was like, so if he thinks there's something here, there must be something here. And you start to build your confidence that way. And that's really crucial in a college professor of drama to build that in people.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Has there been like a special moment in your past 3 months that has kind of been like your highlight or a few highlights from you? Like, is your being the director and seeing what your artists do essentially?
Yeah, oh, that's a good question. Yeah, there was one particular kid, and it may just be because it was the first week we ever did it, but it was our first ever week. Ah, it was so cute. But he was very quiet during auditions, but we cast him and we gave him a role with a little lines, but he was on stage a lot.
Mm.
And he was part of the pirate crew. And at first he was very much like hands in pockets. I'm too cool. Like I'll say my line, but like I don't care. And but as the week progressed, he steadily realized that, oh, this is like cool and kind of important. So he started to be more and more like the leader of the pirates, even though that wasn't his character at all. He started to be like, no, you guys need to get in line. No, we need to listen. No, we need to do this. No, we need to do that. And it was really cool because I don't know if we won him over to theater necessarily, but he grew in a sense of importance because he was being given responsibility and he took it and he kind of blossomed. And it was really cool to see that
Mm.
kind of blossoming. And because we whisk in, we don't know these kids from Adam, and we cast in 2 hours. Like we do auditions for 2 hours and then we cast.
Wow.
So it's like so quick. That like it's really cool because sometimes we'll cast kids who are like, are the come the sporty guy who just like showed up because some friends showed up. And we cast one of those kids as Jim one time, and he was like, why? We're like, well, because you had a lot of energy, you seem excited, like we think you do a good job. And he was like, oh, like he was like kind of taken aback because he had never been looked at with that sort of like,
Mhm.
you're no longer this label that everyone knows you because you grew up for years in this way.
He's been a jock.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And now he's Jim. And it's like kind of cool. That's super cool to see that growth. And
How did he do
he did
live?
well.
He did well.
He did
Okay.
well.
Wow.
Yeah, he did good.
Yeah.
He rose to the occasion.
He wrote.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that kind of ties into one of the questions that you and I had batted back and forth before the show. I mean, I've heard people throw out the term like, "Oh, it's a theater kid," or like, "Oh, he's so theatrical," right? Like, do you believe in the theatrical type?
Mm. I've been thinking about that since we were chatting about it. Yes and no.
Yes and no. Interesting.
I think there are personalities that thrive better in theater. Like, you kind of know the theater kid kind of type with a very extroverted, bubbly, look at me, and like life at the party, and always willing to sing Memory from Cats in the living room during the cast party. Like, always is willing to be out there and doing things. And that's like great. If you have that personality and you want to go into theater, like you're not scared of like auditioning and putting yourself out there and like doing a lot of the branding necessary in theater and the self-marketing. But I've also met some of the best actors are introverts. And
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Break that down a little bit more.
Yeah.
okay, so in my experience, there's one guy in high school / college who like just very lovable, but such an awkward person
Mm.
out off the stage. He was just kind of like just awkward and like didn't really know how to say things, or he felt really uncomfortable in social situations. But you get him on stage and he was just fabulous. Like great character actor, was not afraid to go for it comedically, was really good with like love ballads and things on stage. And it was just amazing. And I've met other, actors who are just because they're introverted, they're like a lot more introspective.
Okay.
And I don't know, they seem to thrive on stage. Like that's not to say all introverts would, but there's a certain artistic type of introvert that I think is very, very good on stage. So I think the cool thing about theater is it can take the most extroverted and it can take introverted, and both can shine on stage. And sometimes I think the theater kid label is like something that we have in our head. So we pretend to be that when we're actually not.
Oh,
Um,
it's like, okay, so you feel as if you got to convince everyone else who's going to be potentially in charge of casting or
Yeah.
potentially in charge of giving you project. You got to pretend to be the theater type.
and I think that's changing. I think more people are more comfortable just being who they are and being more real on stage and just in their life. And I think that's really cool. But I don't think there's like a type.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating. I mean, I was just reflecting on like seeing a lot of my friends like WCC. That's actually where I think I first met Maddie. Was at the that was our sophomore year, so 2019.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Or 2018. I came in 2018.
okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That was which play was that? That was Midsummer's Night Dream.
Hmm.
But that was like I had seen a few plays before, like in high school, of friends who did it. Like they did like Sound of Music and a couple others. And it's so interesting seeing your friends on stage. And then, like, when you meet your friends after the show, you're almost embarrassed to see them because you see them as like the celebrity that now everyone else knows. And you're like, well, I was their friend, but they were so amazing on stage. Like, I don't really know who they are now, because
Who am I talking to?
yeah, because they're like,
Oh,
they showed a different side of themselves
Yeah.
playing
Mm.
through this actor. And you're like,
Mm.
right after the play, like, I feel like I have to get to know you.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Have you?
I could relate to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I've not been involved in theater nearly to the extent that
Mm-mm.
you have. But I have been involved in a few plays, and there is an element of once post performance, if someone's really nailed it, you know what I mean? They have become X, Y, and Z, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is a way in which afterwards you do feel them out of like, okay, are you still the person who I saw an hour ago? Or are you the person I've known my whole life?
Okay, interesting.
Especially if they're wearing like a costume with a lot of makeup, you're like,
Yeah.
I'm not expecting to see the look like that. And then you're kind of like trying to take it all in and how you were celebrating their success. And then you're trying to hype it up afterwards. You're just like, that was so cool. That was so awesome. But you're running out of things to say because you're excited, but you don't know how to express it all.
Mm.
Yeah.
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 I once knew someone who, I mean, I will say they just seemed born for theater. I mean, they were just energized by it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and it's frankly, I will say it spilled over into other areas of their life. Like they could say, they could say, hey, I don't want to take on any new projects. I'm really tired. I'm overworked. Well, blah, blah, blah. Hey, do you want to go publicly present XYZ? And they were like, yeah, okay, I can do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Let's go.
it was like you showed them an audience and they showed you a good time,
Yeah.
Like, so, I mean, do you think so? I think that was half of my question when I was talking to you. Like, is there a theater type? Like, is there just someone who is frankly just energized by an audience?
Oh, and anyone ever who does theater. Like
Okay.
I agree with that.
I had a choicer thing to say, but I won't say it.
No, this is the Green Dragon. Let's have it.
Well, okay. Sometimes an audience, like an actor, can become like the audience's bitch because you want the audience to like you.
Okay.
And you can't always do that. And you kind of live for the audience. And so if like the audience, if you had a bad night, if you had a weird audience, if they're not responding to something, that can throw you through a loop and you're like, oh no. And you're like, oh, maybe I was the problem, da 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 da. So like anyone who does theater loves an audience, wants the adulation, but you have different positions in theater. You have the people on stage,
Yeah.
you have the director, you have the designers, you have the costumers, you have the stagehands. They all want the audience to be happy with it. They all want to keep doing this, but they all want it in different ways. And I think like my experience as an actor, there's nothing better than
And
a standing ovation.
Yeah.
There really isn't. You're on stage and you've done what you believe to be a great job. Your friends have done a great job. Maybe something new happened, and then the
So, like,
audience.
you and your friends cast a spell in a real way.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and then when the audience is bought in, they're like bought in. They want to know what's happening. And so when they like erupt at the end, like when it blacks out and they were like, there's an eruption of applause and the lights come up and you guys go out. And every time, like, as it goes up into the leads, the applause get bigger and bigger. And then when you're the lead and it's like, whoa, it's a little like a high, like you're always chasing that next hit of applause and adulation, which can be bad.
Okay.
But I think is like is a real thing. I think a lot of people, like a lot of actors, like love that.
Mm.
You don't want people to boo you
Right.
after
Right.
a
Yeah.
show. You want people not to clap. But yeah, no, I think there's definitely like for actors, you want the audience to connect with you and so that they do feel something enough to do something at the end.
Mm.
I think as a director, like you want the audience to like it, but there's a difference because sometimes you don't care because you're like, I want the audience to like this because I like it. But I also, if they don't like it,
This was
I'm okay with it.
okay.
Mhm.
My team executes my vision. I'm
Mm.
okay, and I'm less attached to what the audience says.
Yeah, and I found that with directing is like, I have a vision, I have a message I want to say with this. I hope everyone gets it and appreciates it and wants to see it again. But like for some reason, I'm less attached to whether the audience likes it as a director that I was when I was an actor. Like
Mm.
really wanting the audience to like me versus wanting the audience to like the story.
That
I
makes
think is
sense.
the difference. And like being like, okay, if you disagree with the story, I'm okay with that too. Tell me why you disagree. Let's talk. But if you disagree with me as an actor, I don't want to hear that. Like, please don't tell me I was bad, you know.
I don't want someone telling me like, "Oh no, you should have played this person as a little bit more of
Yeah.
a psychopath. No, you should have played them more as a melancholic." No, like, no, no, this is my work.
Yeah. Mm.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. hmm No, I mean, I imagine that if we could, if a neuroscientist could get inside someone's brain at the moment of like that when that applause hits, I imagine some of the chemical processes in the mind and in the brain would resemble that of someone getting a hit of a really good drug, right?
It
Mm.
really isn't anything better. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
there's a few instances where, like, at the end of a show, like the applause, like,
Mhm.
yes, like,
I-
yeah, where you just are so proud. Um, and some nights are really funny because Christoph Waltz said this. He said sometimes you think I've done the best work I've ever done, and you get kind of reviews or applause.
Mhm.
And sometimes you really feel like you've been working like half shot through a whole production. You're like, I'm not feeling it. I'm not connected with anyone.
Mm.
I'm blah, blah, blah. And the audience loves it. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
Mm.
But so his idea was that sometimes when you're feeling it, you're so wrapped up in being an actor that the audience isn't connecting with you.
Mm.
And sometimes when you're not feeling it, you're being more real. And so the audience connects with you. And I have found that to be true and surprising that sometimes when like me and my castmates feel like a show is kind of
Mm.
this is an matinee.
Mm.
And the audience is like raving
They
at
are
the
just
end.
on board. Yeah.
What?
Really?
Like
Right.
yesterday was so much better, guys. Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
But so that's
It's
interesting
11
too.
o'clock on a Sunday. Like, seriously, guys? Yeah.
Yeah, but that I mean, there's you also never know what an audience is going to be like, and that's also fun too. It's like sensing, is this audience a good audience?
Right.
Is this a audience? Like that's always fun
Mm.
to try to pick up on.
Mm.
Probably shouldn't be thinking about it during the show, but you are.
Right, right,
Like you always are.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I remember Cormac McCarthy, who wrote both novels and
Mm.
screenplays. He has one of his characters say that, yeah, it is a novelization, but he has one of his characters talk about how his dad was an athlete and always would actually play better when he had a slight injury. He had he had something not going quite right, not quite in his favor, and for some reason that would just keep his head in the game, whatever, and just bring out like he actually played genuinely better. And I just wonder if like,
Mm.
man, if you feel like, man, I gotta make up for so and so because they're miscast, or like I gotta make up for so and so because like, or I gotta make up for the fact that we have no props. So like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
just like, man, we're just not getting everything. So you just like put in that extra effort, and somehow that connects with the audience. I wonder if it's something of the same dynamic.
Probably.
No.
That is really interesting. I mean, you're saying that, I'm like, well, that's definitely happened to me. Like when it feels like you're on a team, like you're playing a sports game or whatever, and like, it's not really with me today. And like because it's not with you, you got like you're like, I gotta do better.
Hmm.
And that thing that might be holding you back isn't as bad as it seems, maybe.
Yeah.
And so your extra effort actually goes above and beyond what you need it to be.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh.
Yeah. I find that I do that with matinees. If I'm an actor,
Mm.
matinees, I find it so hard to get my head in the game and like be focused for like
Right.
a 2 o'clock show.
Mm-hmm.
But I find that I typically do better at matinees because I'm like, I'm not in the game.
Mm.
Ugh. And so I like
Yeah.
focus more and
Come on, Maddie.
I know. Oh.
Put it in. You know.
But yeah, I think it's a similar thing of like you're kind of overcompensating,
Yeah.
but because you might be tired and think you have to overcompensate, it kind of levels out and
Mm.
like evens out.
Why do people work backstage, you know, for years on end, particularly, right? I mean, why does anyone work backstage? I mean, you're involved in theater, but you don't get to go out for the applause, right? You don't get to go out after the final curtain.
It's the adrenaline.
Adrenaline. Okay, talk to us about that.
So I've been an assistant stage manager 3 times.
Okay.
And like it's just as much fun backstage as it is on stage.
Okay.
But what you're seeing is I think Henry Fonda said this, you're watching the wheels as so he said this in terms of acting. He said acting is not letting the wheels show. So like you have this whole process, you're doing this whole thing, but you make it look easy like a dancer. Like when a dancer is good, you're like, that looked amazing. And I bet I could do that too. But it takes years and years of years to make that look that easy and approachable. Well, you're the wheels backstage. And so you get to see it from the opposite side. So you're seeing people not getting into their costumes on time. And so people are making things up on stage. And the audience has no idea that that's happening if you have really good actors. And you're part of the prop team. So you can create some of the props that go on stage and you're doing special effects that are happening and you're running around and you're trying to get other things happening. And it's just, you're like going the whole time. This is major adrenaline.
Mm.
And that's why I prefer to be assistant stage manager because the stage manager is up in the lighting booth
Okay.
and is calling the show. So
Uh-huh.
the assistant stage manager is calling the sound cues, the lighting cues, and is on headset with the assistant stage manager on stage, who is like also on headset following along. But like if the stage manager's like, so and so has the wrong prop. Why does he have the wrong prop? You're like, okay, great, let me go check. And you go and maybe the prop wasn't in the right spot, or maybe that actor moved the prop and forgot where it was, or something like that. So you are the legs for the stage manager's eyes. And so you run around and you do your thing. And I don't know, it's a lot of problem solving. There's a lot of creativity, a lot of logistical creativity, problem solving, adrenaline. It's all under a time crunch because obviously the play is going and the play doesn't stop if something goes wrong. You just have to keep going unless something horrendous goes wrong. But yeah, it's really fun. And I mean, I can only speak from my experience of like, as someone who loves to be on stage, I love the backstage because it's a whole new world of like adrenaline and
Mhm.
interest and like just things are going on.
Mm.
For people who are like techies for their entire life, I think it's just a way for them to be creative,
Mm.
but not have to be the center of attention.
Okay.
Like they
And some
like to
people want be
contribute.
right in that
Oh,
niche.
yeah.
Yeah.
And those are sometimes the best techies. Like they do everything. They're very much under the wire. They don't talk very much, but they make amazing things
Mhm.
because they're watching the whole time. And they're aware of the audience. They're aware of what actors want and what they don't want and things like that. But they're just very happy and comfortable just being behind the scenes.
Okay.
And I think you can
Okay.
see that in a lot of other professions. There's a lot of behind the scene people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think theater people are kind of the same way. They just
Okay.
like want to be a part of it. Don't
They
need don't need to be on
center,
stage.
literally don't need to be center stage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But they
Like-
know that they're helping cast a spell.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And almost like I think of the Shakespeare, we are the dreamers of dreams. I think
Mhm.
it's from The Tempest.
Hmm.
That's what it feels like to be a techie. You're kind of the magic maker.
Mm-hmm.
Cause like I was assistant stage manager for the comedy called Baskerville, which is a Sherlock Holmes comedy, and it is crazy and fast and insane. and we had to do dry ice. We had to do a dry ice effect, which is hit and miss because sometimes dry ice goes up in a plume and doesn't go down.
It doesn't.
And sometimes it just
see
doesn't
the-
mist at all. And you're like, well, this was supposed to be a mist. Now there's no mist. So dry ice is so hard to work with.
Gosh.
But there was always like, that was our big challenge because we got everything else basically down, but we had to figure out how to time the dry ice correct. So that way it was foggy enough when Sherlock said his line, but not overly foggy and not gone because it kind of was necessary for the line. And that was like, sometimes we did too late and it was like still way too foggy when something else was supposed to happen. And sometimes we did too early and there was no fog on stage. So like it's challenges like that. Like how do we get it just right?
So yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I mean, it's slightly different, slightly field, but I mean that time I put on that dinner party for my sister,
Mm.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think in some ways it's related to theater in the sense that there's all these cues that need to be hit.
Mhm.
There's stuff happening in the kitchen, the backstage, and then there's
Mhm.
what's happening out on the floor, the experience of the people who were there.
Mhm.
And I remember I frankly ended up being backstage the whole time.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you guys, I loved every minute of it. Like I did not have any particular need to be like out there getting everyone's attention
Mhm.
as so long as they were having a good time, right? And it was, again, you talk about magic. It was like the spell we're trying to cast right now is everyone just has a night
Yeah.
to remember. Right. Like this is not just your regular potluck. Like this is a night where people who don't normally experience the best of food, the best of service, the best of environment, the best of light, right? I mean,
Mhm.
and again, it's not a play, but it had some of the same elements, right? Of like we're trying to cast a spell. And I remember thinking at the end of it, I was like, man, I've like barely seen anyone here, and I'm totally okay with it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't want to talk to these people.
I invited them, but I don't want to talk to
Right,
them.
right. But by golly, at the end of it, I want them to tell me how great it was,
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think that's what
Well.
great chefs do. I mean, you don't see chefs out there bringing the food. I mean, they let an intermediary do it, which is kind of exactly what a playwright and director do.
okay.
They let an intermediary bring forth their dish
Mm-hmm.
and hope and expect sometimes for people to appreciate it.
Mm.
And I think, I don't think theater is unique in that way. I think it has a unique approach, but I think culinary, like chef, is very similar, I think,
Mhm.
to that kind of creation of magic backstage, to appreciation of the magic on stage, trusting that the server or the actor will portray it correctly.
Mm.
And I think that's pretty cool.
Reminds me a bit of my dad's nursery, his plant nursery garden center. So my job was loading people's cars so they buy their plants and I just load them in for them.
Mhm.
And sometimes I would find out that my dad owned the nursery and they'd be like, because like to them the nursery was their oasis. Like everyone would go to the nursery because we were like in the middle of suburbia Chicago, so this was a place people just go to find peace and quiet. So they would just go there for like 3 hours.
Just wander.
Yeah, they just wander around, just look at plants, pick up things, and they're like, "Well, wow." She's like, "Go tell your dad thank you."
Mm.
And I was like, "Well," so my dad was, like kind of the invisible man, and he'd walk around. He never wore like a label or anything. He just was like usually wore like a zip up, or something.
Yeah.
People would talk to him and stuff, and then later they'd find out he's the owner. Like, whoa, like, that was so cool.
Yeah.
But they get to meet like the mind behind what they experience.
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of like the joy of like meeting the director, meeting the
Mhm.
chef, is you're like, who is this person that can do such great work? I want to see what their mind is like.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel all right, so you have a show
Mhm.
and just everything comes together,
Mhm.
right? And it's just a win and the audience is captured by it. and then the show ends and everyone goes home, and it's sort of lost forever, right? I mean, it's in people's memory. And the next night you could put on the same show with a different audience, and hopefully you recapture the magic again. But what are your thoughts on just the ephemeral nature of theater, as opposed to so many of the other arts where, like, we're still looking at the Sistine Chapel, and it's in some ways still the same, whereas a theater performance, by its very nature, it's gone the moment it's done.
That's what I love about it.
That's what you love about
I
it.
love the ephemeral nature of theater. It's
Damn.
it's some of the best. Cause like it's like an impression. You're like, how do I explain
Yeah,
it? Like,
yeah. We got all the time in the world.
no, I mean it was kind of like what I was telling you. Yeah, I think it was on Saturday. We were in Jackson. I was telling you that the ephemeral nature of theater is like living life. You have a great time at a party, you have a great connection with a friend. That always is going to live in your memory.
Okay.
You're never going to go and totally re-experience that in life. You can't have that same great conversation no matter how hard you try to cultivate it. It's never going to be exactly the same
Right.
as you had that night that it really hit you.
Yeah.
And life is like that. Life is lived forward and in the present, constantly in the present. And you can appreciate it in the past, but you can never get it the same in the past. And that's exactly what theater is. And it's this ephemeral nature of like, no one sees the same show. They see this, they hear the same story. They
Okay.
don't see the same show. And the craziness is like you can go see a Broadway show and maybe it's a bomb because everyone's having a bad night. And you're like, that sucked. But then you go the next night or you go a different time and you see the same story, different actors, and everyone was on it. And you're like, oh my gosh. Like I still remember my feeling. I felt maybe a little like a junkie because I met up with a friend I hadn't seen in 4 years, like physically seen in 4 years. I talked to her a lot, but I hadn't physically seen her in 4 years. And we met and went to my first ever Broadway show at the beginning of 2023. And we saw Moulin Rouge with Aaron Tveit. And have you guys seen the movie version of Les Mis?
With Hugh Jackman?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I don't know if you remember, but one of the characters, the blonde resistance guy, that's Aaron Tveit.
Okay.
He was playing Enjolras in Les Mis, and I fell in love with him when I watched Les Mis. I have followed his career. He's really great. He's amazing, and I specifically wanted to see him in this revival of Moulin Rouge. So we went and we saw it. And I was kind of going through a hard time personally and like not sure what I want to do with my career and whatnot. Went and met with my friend. We went to Broadway. We saw this show. It was a matinee. It was at 2:00. And we came out into New York and I was like shaking. I was physically shaking and was like, it was again like a life-changing moment. I was like, oh my gosh, I was like bouncing up and down like afterwards. I could not contain how happy and ecstatic and like just it was so good. It was just amazing. It was just I understood then why Broadway is like the mecca of musical theater and why people strive and live their entire lives in obscurity just for the chance to be on it. And I was so shaking and so like
Why they're willing to live in like a 200 square foot apartment.
because there's that possibility. And once you see a Broadway show, you totally get it. And I remember talking with my friend afterwards and just being like, oh my gosh, like talking all about it. And realizing in that moment of like total, I mean, okay, ecstasy is a little bit of a strong phrase, but basically ecstasy
In the
of this
shadow of ecstasy.
performance.
Yeah.
I knew in my back of my mind, I was like, I need to do this. This is what I need.
Yeah.
I want to elicit this feeling in other people. Because it was so, and like Moulin Rouge is not like a super deep show. It's like really fun. And it's really just a bunch of pop music put into like a musical theater vibe. And it's French and it's, a little bit sexy and it's like fun. it's not a super deep show, but it was just so much fun.
Mm.
And not in like a super escapism way, but just in a super enjoyable way that I like in my head, I was like, I need this. I need to do this. I want to elicit this feeling. And that is kind of the final thing that pushed me into like re-pursuing it as a career path was that particular show in New York in January of 2023. Like,
Oh,
so yeah, it's just the ephemerality and knowing that if I went to it, well, and this is cool too, because I went to a theater conference in college and saw the play Oleana by David Mamet. 2-person show, amazing, so good. I saw it the first night and didn't really want to see it because I thought David Mamet was vulgar. Ugh. And then I saw it and I was like, this is amazing. I love this show. And then a bunch of them were going to a different show the night after. And I was like, no, I want to go to Oleana again. So I saw it twice in a row.
Mm.
And it was funny because I loved it the same, but it felt flatter to me the second night than it had the first night.
Okay.
But I still loved it. Like I still really appreciated it. But yeah, it was just it hit different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so cool. That's what I love is that feeling of like no two shows are the same. No audience, even if it's a repeat audience, is ever going to get the same feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be both a really wonderful thing and a really hard thing.
And I thank God they're gone.
Yeah. Or like when you talk a show up
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, this is amazing. And then someone goes and sees it. And they're like, oh, I was like, okay. Like, what?
Mm.
Like, why didn't you see it the way I saw it? And maybe like they weren't in the mood, or I mean, there's 1,001 variables as to why, but like that's what's really cool because it really reflects life in that way. Like
mm.
you go to the party, no one is experiencing the party exactly the same way.
Mhm.
And I think it's just, I don't know why I like it so much, but I love that aspect of
Mm.
theater. It's never the same. It never will be.
Mhm.
And therefore, every single thing is unique about it in
Mhm.
every way.
Yeah, I mean, so I think it was Mean Girls just got put back. They made a movie, but they
Mhm.
used many of the cast members from, I guess there's a
The Broadway
Broadway play,
version.
right? So we live in an age, and our generation, our parents, to an extent, our grandparents, we're the first 3 generations to ever have a chance at this,
Mhm.
to revisit the same performance more than one
Mm.
time,
Mhm.
right? Um, and so, you think of the thousands of generations that have existed in human history. We are the first 3 generations to truly be able to be like, oh, like let's rewind and watch it again.
Yeah.
Right? That has never happened in a
Mhm.
billion years,
Yeah.
right? What do you think? I mean, do you think the fact that we are a generation of TV and movie watchers, I mean, is that changing our appreciation of performance itself?
Really good question. Like, I don't. Hmm.
And no, and if the audience is not, if our audience right now is not clear, I love rewatching some of my favorite
I was
movies.
gonna
You know what
say,
I mean?
I
I'm
love it
not saying
too.
like, oh, this is so regrettable,
No.
right?
No, because there's a couple movies that I like try to watch every year
Mm-hmm.
because they have such an effect.
Mm.
But I have noticed as I've gotten older and done that with the specific movies, like they don't have the same power that they did the first 3 or 4 times.
Okay.
3 or 4 times that I watched them. No, but I love film, and I think acting for film is very impressive in a very different way because you have to be so subtle, and it's really hard to act for camera. So I don't want to put down film at all, and film and television is amazing art forms in their own right. But I do think as far as the audience connection is very passive
Okay.
because you can rewind, because you can fast forward, because you can pause, you're not going to miss anything.
Mm.
You can put subtitles on, you're not going to miss anything. But with live theater, if you go to the bathroom in the middle of the show, you're going to miss something.
Yeah.
Maybe that's crucial.
Right.
And maybe you can't always hear it. And maybe maybe someone messes up. maybe, yeah. And that's what's really cool about live theater too, is like you can see the bloopers in real time. And sometimes you never realize you've seen a blooper because they're really good at hiding it. And sometimes you realize you've seen a blooper and you're like, huh, this is an inside, like this is something only this group is experiencing right now. Because they probably won't do this tomorrow because they've done it tonight. Yeah. But with movies, like it's so much fun to watch the blooper reels. Those are so much fun. But you don't see the bloopers and you're not in on the jokes and you're not in on that, the kind of like little like wink and a nod. But I mean, it has its own power, but I think it's relatively passive. I think watching movies is relatively passive
Okay.
as far as like audience with actor. And unless you go to a premiere, you never know how your audience responds to it. Like in real time. And it's interesting because Austin Butler, who's very, an up and coming Hollywood actor, did The Iceman Cometh on Broadway, which is a Eugene O'Neill play. And he was saying this in an interview that like every night is different. Every night you're connecting with people in different ways. And so many Hollywood actors who've done Broadway and come back were saying that that was the hardest thing they've ever done in their lives. Like Emma Stone did Broadway for a while. She was in Cabaret. And she was like, that was like, I don't know if I'm cut out for that. Like that is so hard because you're in front of a live audience versus when
Presumably, if you're acting for the
screen.
camera, you can be like, line, right?
Yeah.
Or you can be
You can
like,
cut,
or all right, I'm sorry. Let's try that again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you freeze, I mean, so many great actors like Laurence Olivier and Ian Holmes, famously, these two are famous, been acting for, years and years and years, freeze up on stage and have a nervous breakdown because they're like, I can't be an actor anymore. Like Ian Holmes went away from theater, I think for 30 years because he had a nervous breakdown during a show. And was like, I can't do this. And he went away and he did a lot of movies. And I think in that intervening time before coming back to theater, because he was like, I think a Royal Shakespearean actor.
Yeah, I believe that's
and
right.
Laurence Olivier did an amazing Othello and then thought he couldn't act after that run. And he like really was in a slump for a very long time. So there is a demand in live theater that is just not present in film and television. And not to say that one is better than the other, but one I think demands more than the other in certain ways, especially as regards to connecting with the audience. And yeah, I think it's weird with streaming of theater because that has become a thing after COVID. Like the National in England has been doing a lot of streaming, and that's really cool. But I don't think as efficacious because you're losing a lot of the point of theater is to see it. Like even watching a professionally done recorded version of something is never as good as seeing it.
Right.
And it's not a movie, so it's not done in the sense of to elicit the same effect as a movie is. So yeah, it's just like, I don't know. I think it's more passive versus active. And I think some people are more comfortable with passive than with active.
Okay.
So the really long-winded version, like answer to your question.
That's insightful. As you were talking, I was thinking about, how there was sort of a shift in what it took to be an actor when acting went from the stage to the screen, right? Like, you look at Cary Grant, who I understand was a professional clown before his acting career. So
And you can tell in his movies.
yeah, I mean, he had this whole body presence, right? Like when he showed emotion, he showed it in his shoulders, right? Is that present in our acting of today, where we have the ability to put the camera right up close to someone's face? And so now the demand is, can you show those tiny twitches of emotion in your face, right? I mean, I think of James McAvoy in the movie where he plays someone with multiple personality disorder. What was that one called? Split,
So
right? And frankly, one could claim he's, more qualified than the material, but whatever. Nonetheless, I mean, he plays someone where he's able to transfer to the audience the sense of one one of his personality is taking over from another one
Mhm.
just by what's going on in his face, which in a certain way is not available to someone on stage because they got to be able to
Mhm.
translate things to an audience member 200 feet away.
Mhm.
And so they need to be able to do things with their shoulders and their stomach and their
Mhm.
hands that maybe modern camera acting doesn't require.
No, I'm reading a book by Stella Adler, who was a famous actress in her own right, but also a very famous teacher, and was part of I believe it was called the New American Theater. They were only around for like 10 years, but it was like her and Sanford Meisner and a couple other people who kind of developed their own methods.
Mm.
And Stella is always this idea of like, you have to be big. It requires strength. It requires like you have to be physically fit. Your voice has to be physically fit. You have to take care of yourself as an actress. Like you're not supposed to go out and party because you have to drink lemon water and you have to take care of yourself because you have to be the queen tomorrow. Like her idea was very like big. Like you're not made to be maids and peasant women. You're made to be queens and royalty and like demand this thing on stage, and you have to require it of your audience and of yourself. And yeah, and I think she would totally agree that there are things you can do as a theater actor that just do not like translate on screen because it's too big. It's too much.
Okay.
And that's what's amazing about people like Cillian Murphy and James McAvoy and some of the most, I mean, Brad Pitt, I would put up there. Um, Carrie Mulligan. Oh my gosh. There's some of those like it's micro emotions that everyone does,
Mm.
but when you think about it, you can't do
Right,
it.
right,
You know, like everyone has like when you're in a conversation, everyone's constantly adjusting their face to like what they're thinking.
right.
Um, and it's being sentient of that and then using that in make believe situations. That is just like, yeah, when James McAvoy is doing those twitches in
Yeah.
Split, or Austin Butler has changed physically and permanently changed how his vocal cords sound because he played Elvis.
Mm.
Like it's just insane the physical transformations that you do for film that you can't do necessarily for theater
Mm.
because you need the stamina to do it. Like Christian Bale losing all that weight to play the machinist and the
Machinist.
fighter is, I mean, you have to have a stamina and endurance and a physicality on stage that maybe you're playing a character who's dying of tuberculosis, but you can't necessarily look like you're dying of tuberculosis because you have to be up there for 8 shows a week.
Right, right,
You
right.
know,
And you
like
still have to project your voice back to
yeah.
the back of the room.
So you maybe you hollow out your chest physically and you comport yourself differently to give the idea that you are dying of tuberculosis,
Right.
but you can't lose all that weight because you would faint on stage or
Mhm.
something like that. And there is a famous thing of Oliver Reed, who played Superman, I think in the 60s.
Uh-huh.
He was playing with Katharine Hepburn on stage because he went to Juilliard. He was like a very well-trained actor. And he was playing I think he was playing a milk boy or something. He comes in and he faints because he's been doing 1,000 other things and he wasn't taking care of himself. And he comes in, he ends up fainting on stage. And Hepburn goes up to him and goes, "Poor boy, not eating his red meat." And then goes on as if he wasn't in there, like just goes on with the show. And it just shows the difference of like, if you faint on set, they can stop and they can move on and they can, get you situated and do other scenes and then come back to you. Whereas like on stage, you can't do that.
Yeah,
Like
the
if you
audience is
faint on stage, like you're missing your role.
right, right, right. The audience is there now.
Yeah, like you can't. So I think it's,
And they paid good money.
yeah.
I mean, they're not looking, right, right.
Well, and actors who can do both are insane. Like Christopher Plummer
Mm.
preferred theater, but did Hollywood for money because you get more
He's
money.
the old man in Knives Out.
Mhm.
And then he
Oh,
was the
yeah.
dad in Sound of Music.
Yep.
And then he's also
He's in a lot of old movies.
the Scarlet and
Mhm.
the Scarlet and the Black, right?
Mhm.
He plays the baddie.
And he's super good
Mm.
in film,
Yeah.
but he's also really good on stage. but he preferred the stage.
Okay.
But he did Hollywood for money.
Hey man, you gotta pay for that vacation home in Italy somehow.
I know. But yeah, I think both require intense technique. Like I would never say ever in my life that like James McAvoy, Keira Knightley, Timothy Chalamet, Zendaya are like lazy actors. I think when I say passive, it's much more on the audience's side.
Sure.
Then I mean, they're doing a lot of work
Yeah.
to look like they're not doing any work.
Sure.
And the same thing with theater is like they're doing a lot of work to portray something that looks real.
Hmm.
But I think the physicality of theater is much more fun
Okay.
than maybe because I didn't put enough effort into camera acting, but I just prefer theater acting. Because I've done some camera work and it's just like I don't know, it's very tiresome.
Why is it that, I mean, movie stars can become, among the most famous people in the world, right? Whereas, like, frankly, I would be troubled to name one actor who is in Broadway exclusively, right? Like, I might be able to name actors who do both. I mean, what's going on there? I mean, it's like Broadway, you could basically work in, except the theater circles, you're basically an obscure figure. Versus Brad Pitt, I mean, he's one of the most recognizable people on the planet. Like, what happened?
I don't know. Honestly, like I think a lot of actually theater actors are wondering that too, because there was a swath of time, like 4 years ago or so, where they were doing a lot of movie musicals. Like they did Les Mis and they did Cats and they did Prom was like
They did it. It's over. Let's all move
which is so sad because Cats is a great show. I will defend that to my dying day. But they did like Prom, which was made for TV musical. They did Grease, which was a made for TV musical. And they will and there was a contention because theater actors are saying they're taking these movie musicals, but they're putting movie actors in there and not Broadway actors in there.
Well, and that's what helps get the views, right? Like,
But like to be fair, Hugh Jackman started on Broadway
sure.
and is really good on Broadway. But he started on Broadway. Nathan Lane, I believe, started on Broadway.
Hmm?
Besiege my heart. I love Nathan Lane. Nathan Lane started on Broadway. Aaron Tveit, I mean, he does a lot. Like he did Schmigadoon with Apple, and so he's done both but he's a primary theater actor or Broadway actor. But I mean, there's a contention that theater actors are kind of erased unless you're on the East Coast and you go to Broadway a lot and you just know the figures. And I think because movies are easy, you can go see a movie whenever you want. You can stream it wherever you want. Whereas with theater, you have to make an effort. There's an effort involved. You typically get dressed up, you pay more money. Like instead of like a $12.50 or $15.50 ticket to a movie, which is expensive, you're paying $30 or $40 to go see a show. And so there's an expense.
Or 90 or 150.
Or
I mean, yeah.
200.
Yeah.
Or you get a deal on Black Friday.
Black
And that's how
Friday.
you can go see Moulin Rouge. No, but for example, like
put the link in the description.
no, but for example, my friend and I want to do another Broadway trip, and I want to see the new musical of Water for Elephants.
Mhm.
That's a completely original musical from the book Water for Elephants. And I was looking at the tickets, and it's like $190 for a relatively cheap seat. And I was like, okay, that's actually not bad for a musical like that on Broadway. That's actually not bad. So I was like, okay, like, whatever. But that's like a barrier for most people. But if you were to gather up how many times someone goes to see a Marvel movie and you calculated that, if they were willing to wait and spend it at one place at one time for one experience, they could go see a show. But there's a barrier of effort, there's a barrier of expense. And typically, unless something is touring in your city, like you may not have access to it, whereas you can always stream or always go to the movies.
Right.
So I think
Well,
there's
and that's
just an
part of
ease.
even since I'm going to say that the 20s,
Mhm.
20s, 30s. I mean, yeah, you could just send out the film across the country and now everyone can see it, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, you only have to charge 30 cents, $1.50. You know, obviously now movie tickets are at 15.50 or whatever, but still, like you can have millions of people see it. And so yeah, you can pay an actor $25 million to be in your movie, whereas no Broadway show would dream of.
Exactly know how much Broadway actors are paid. I know if you're higher up, if you're Sutton Foster, if you're Aaron Tveit, if you're um Lin-Manuel Miranda, I mean he's a composer, not quite an actor.
Right.
Leslie Odom Jr., I'm sure gets paid a lot.
Right. But I mean, Adam Sandler made $73 million.
I don't know if they're getting paid that
I
much.
don't, I would actually be willing to put some money on. I don't think there's anyone on Broadway who made 73 million last year.
No,
Right.
probably
You know,
not.
maybe they made a good income, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they made, again, I don't know. And I'd be happy to be informed, but like maybe they made $250,000 versus 73 million.
It's just obscene. Like I
Is
just
it?
think so.
It's just money.
I don't know. I think
Why not be paid 70? Why not? Why not?
well because
Who's it hurting?
well, I mean, it's whatever you think it's honestly, it's whatever you believe the value of the performance to be
Hmm.
and the value of that person in your show.
Yep.
So I leave it up to I am a believer in capitalism. I will leave it up to whoever is willing to pay it and
Yeah.
why they were willing to pay it.
Mm.
Like having Ryan Gosling in your film for 12.5 million.
Mm.
Maybe it's not a bad bet. People probably go see that movie. But
He's my favorite actor in Hollywood today.
He is?
what?
Whoa.
Ryan Gosling?
Really?
Wow.
Oh, I did not think this was going to be so controversial.
I love Ryan Gosling, but I don't think he's the best. Cillian Murphy, man. Cillian Murphy.
Oh, okay, all right. I'm willing to concede that Cillian Murphy has some thespian chops that may not have appear in modern Hollywood. But I mean, have you ever seen The Nice Guys? The Nice Guys is
I
hilarious.
recently watched The Nice
Oh
Guys.
my
And it
God.
was very
Yeah,
funny.
Ryan Gosling is hilarious. I mean, I just love it. Yeah. This new
No, he's
movie.
good.
He's got this new movie coming out with Emily Blunt. What's the
Oh,
Fall Guy?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm gonna go see it.
Yep.
It's gonna be a good time. Yeah.
He's kind of the quintessential like guy next door. You know how there's the
Mm.
girl next door? He's like the hot guy next
So
door.
I've been informed. Yeah.
He's like,
He's really. I watched the movie The First Man. It was
Yeah.
him as being Neil Armstrong.
Yeah.
oh whoa, I didn't know he did that.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Like 4 years ago, 4 years ago, probably when
Yeah.
they made it. He was yeah. Shout out to Ryan Gosling
Yeah.
right now. I mean,
Love
if
you.
he's listening, we will happily have you on the podcast here in Lander, Wyoming. You name the date, we'll make it happen. Yeah.
Throwing
Sorry, I
some like
offended you.
sightseeing and like
Oh yeah.
all those
Yeah.
stuff.
We'll take you to Gannett. We'll take you up to sing.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll be a good time, right? Yeah. Yeah.
So funny.
like in The First Man, like sometimes you had to like remind yourself that it was Ryan Gosling
Wow.
Mhm.
because he was so in his role of being
Mm.
a dad that wanted to go to the moon.
Mhm.
Whoa.
And he was super quiet, soft spoken, didn't say hardly anything through the movie,
Whoa.
Mm.
but it was like very intently about him. It was really interesting.
I've never heard of that one.
Yeah. But
I-
then
yeah. Oh man.
like you could go to like another one where he's, like I don't know, just like one of his like I guess like stereotypical roles, like being Ken, like he could do
He
both.
was the best part of Barbie.
Was he? Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He
heard-
was the best part.
I've heard some commentary being like, yeah, no one will admit it,
but
but Ryan Gosling was the best part of the Barbie movie. So no, the guy's got range. What can I
No,
say?
Quite
Yeah.
bit.
yeah.
All right. I should stop revealing the
fanboy
I should
about
stop
Ryan
revealing
Gosling.
the
From
the
you.
bro crush that I got on Ryan Gosling. Yeah. Now, Maddie, you've been involved in some projects using found theater space. For the sake of our audience, could you just explain what that is and just tell us your interest in it?
Well, theater space is when, or known as found theater, is when you use a non-traditional theater space as a theater itself. So it could be a laundromat, it could be a living room, it could be outside without a stage,
Mm.
basically any place you want to put up a theater.
Okay.
And I think for certain stories, found space theater just works better.
Okay.
Because you're less removed. Because, like, when you're on a stage, especially a traditional proscenium stage where the audience is kind of like a couple feet over,
Mm.
there's an orchestra pit, maybe, or maybe there's just space, and then there's a little bit of removal. But like, there's a specific show that you want to just be a tableau, or you just really want them to think about it, or something like that. But then there's shows that you want to invite them into. And I think found space and black box. I love both of them. I really love black box theater.
What's black box?
So it's a lot more intimate. It tends to be very pared down. It's very minimalist set, minimalist props.
Okay.
Tends to be in a more square, like basically a square room with like bleacher type seats that can be moved around to be in whatever configuration, smaller, way more intimate. So I really like that because I think you can be a lot more creative and it's a lot more intimate and small. And found space, I think, is an offshoot of that. At least for me, it's an offshoot of that. And you can really just invite the audience in to be a part of it in a way that you can't in a traditional proscenium style stage production of something. And I love that because as someone who loves theater, I love being in the mix of it all and being a part of it and sitting on stage. Anytime I get a chance to sit on stage or near the actors, I love it.
Okay.
This is really funny. During college, we in where is it called? It's called the Blackfriars. Where is it? Virginia. It's in Virginia. It's Blackfriars Theater. They have a replication of the old Globe, and they do Shakespeare. And I convinced 3 very introverted friends to come with me to go to see it. And they went to go save a table at the restaurant, and they were like, "You go get the tickets. We'll save the table." So we split up. So I was with a friend, and the other couple was over there. And we walk up, and he was like, "You can go get the tickets. I don't really want to go." And I was like, "Okay, cool." I walk up. They're like, "All right, 4 tickets. Where would you like to sit?" And they swivel over the seating chart. And there were these little stools on the stage. And I was like, "What are those?"
Right.
And they were like, "Oh, that's what you're sitting on the stage." So we were seeing Coriolanus. And so the plebeians who rally up the crowd against Coriolanus, they're going to interact with you a lot. And I was like, "Are those more expensive?" And they're like, "No, it's the same price." And I was like, "We'll have 4 of those."
Yeah.
And so I went back.
Introversion be damned.
So happy. I don't care. Like, I want to sit on stage. So I go back and he was like, "Oh, great. So you have tickets?" I was like, "Yeah, we do." And then we went back and we found the other couple and we sat down. I was like, "Guys, we're sitting on stage." And I kid you not, the other guy, his face went white. I was like, "What?" It's like, "No, it'll be really fun. I promise." So anytime I get a chance to be up with the action, I jump at it. It's not everyone's cup of tea, obviously. But I think with certain shows, it can be very useful and very good for the audience to be pushed in that physically uncomfortable space. So that's why I like found spaces. I think for certain shows, not every show, found space is extremely helpful to allow the audience to enter into the show in a way that they may not be able to in a regular show.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's black box.
Well, that's found space.
That's
Black
found
box
space.
is similar. Black box are usually not sitting in or being in this space. So the difference is found space is like they may be on the stage, actors may be moving past them, interacting around them, maybe not with them, but like
Okay.
around them in a very intimate, non-traditional theater space.
Okay.
Whereas a black box is a theater space. You know it's a theater space. You're sitting in seats. You may not be interacted with or around, but you're very much intimate with the action on stage. And they might look at you and maybe catch your eye and talk to you a minute and before moving on.
Yeah.
And then proscenium, like regular stage, you may
Sorry.
be super
Can you say that word a little more slowly?
proscenium.
Proscenium.
Mhm.
And that's Greek?
Yeah, maybe. I think so.
Proscenium.
It's when you have like the regular, like the rounded stage,
Mhm.
where if you have a curtain, you have an apron. So you have that bit of stage outside of it. where people can walk around while they're changing set backstage, and then they move it and you have a space.
Mm.
There's also like Jut Theater, where you have like basically a projection out into the audience, which
Okay.
you're then interacting with that. And there's a theater in the round, which is like where the audience is all around you, which is really fun. But there's like basically it's a big circular stage with juts sometimes, and there's people around you, and that's a very different way of acting and directing.
How does the backstage crew work around theater? I mean, it's just the lights go down and you just got to run out down the aisles to swap the sets, or there's less set swapping.
There's typically less set swapping because you can't have too much set because you don't want to block any views.
Okay.
And for the most part, at least in the ones that I've done, which have been collegiate, so I think they probably run into issues with the union in professional, is actors move the props around. And like
Okay.
lights go down on one section while lights are up on the other section. So actors are kind of slowly moving things around in the dark, kind of the faded dark over here, while actors are taking the attention of the audience over here.
Okay.
And I mean, a lot of that, like trapdoors are used a lot for that, things
Yeah.
like that. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do theater.
Okay. So a good playwright will think about not only their story, not only their blocking, but they'll think about what kind of stage is this going to be on.
I don't know.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of people do shows that you wouldn't think to do. Like the National, I think it was the National, did a version of Streetcar Named Desire, and they did it in the round, which I would never have thought of doing because it requires kind of like a set to set the mood. At least I would have thought. But the way that they did it was really ingenious with like I don't know, like a window here, but it was cut to so it wouldn't block anyone's view, but you still got the window and the decaying factor and all of that.
Oh.
So like I think most of the time playwrights are not necessary. I don't know, I'm not a playwright, but I would venture a guess that most playwrights aren't writing specifically for a stage unless they were writing for a company that does a particular staging thing.
Okay. Gotcha.
But maybe modern playwrights are more attuned to it than older playwrights are.
Okay. Right. Because they may know that this performance may need to be done in different parts of the world, in different parts of the country. They like, I want this to be available to the people. I may have to write it in a way that it could be done in someone's living room. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, I mean, I'd be remiss if I let you go without, we got to get into movies here a little bit.
Yeah,
I mean, we've been talking about different movies for the last year. One of the first movies you and I talked about extensively was the oh my gosh, why am I blanking on what's it called? Margin Call. There you go.
Oh,
yeah. With I mean, who does it have in it? It's got Kevin Spacey, and
Zachary Quinto.
oh my God, why the girl who Demi Moore. It's got Demi Moore in it.
It does.
Yeah.
I only remember the guys.
Yeah, and Jeremy Irons.
Zachary Quinto.
Kevin Spacey is great in it. And then Paul Bettany is in it.
Oh, you're right. I
Right.
forgot about Paul Bettany. Yeah.
Now, someone said to me that was a movie that really could be theater, right? Like you could put that movie on as a play, which to me seems right. I mean, the trappings and the actual movie. Are you familiar with it?
I'm not. No.
Okay, so it's basically a imagining of what might have happened in corporate boardrooms once the 2008 housing crisis, which is really, it's kind of misnamed. It's the 2008 financial crisis, because housing and housing speculation had become a vector for massive, frankly, poorly informed, insane gambles on the housing market had spilled out into the rest of the financial markets. So it's a imagining of what might have happened in certain boardrooms. Goldman Sachs. uh, what those conversations might have looked like. And to me, that description seems right, that most of the scenes could be put onto a stage. There's really no special effects. Certainly in the actual movie, scenes take place on top of skyscrapers or on the street, but honestly, they could be anywhere. It's
Yeah.
about the conversations. But you had mentioned it to me, and I don't think I had seen it before you and I had talked about it,
Oh, yeah?
that you had thought it was a movie that was the sort of movie that people should see because of acting leads the way. It's not special effects. Obviously, the dialogue's there, but acting leads the way in a way that theater often demands. But have you seen it recently, or has it
Margin Call?
Margin Call? Yeah.
Not rewatched
Okay.
Margin
I haven't
Call.
watched it. Okay.
Not because I didn't think it was good, but I just haven't rewatched it. No.
What movies have you been watching recently?
I have to say, I've been doing like, I haven't really been watching a lot of movies. I've been trying to watch more movies. I've been doing a lot more television.
Ooh, okay. Interesting.
But I have watched a few older films, and that's always interesting to do. But I watched like All About Eve, which I believe is a stage play that they made into a movie, but that was really good.
What's it called again?
All About Eve.
All About Eve. Okay.
Which is basically like social climbing in theater, in the theater world.
Oh my God.
That's very good. I
Sounds a
believe,
little ugly.
well, it's
Well, so all
well
social
done.
climbing sounds,
Yeah.
yeah.
All social climbing is ugly. And I watched Shanghai Express, which is a Marlene Dietrich movie, which everyone was like, or like a lot of film people are like, "Oh, this is amazing," and it was interesting. But yeah, I've watched those. I watched Dune recently. I've seen American Fiction recently. Yeah, I've kind of seen the blockbusters. I tried to watch some of the Academy Award nominated films before the Academy Awards. Didn't get to most of them, but I've been watching a lot of television more than films recently. I've not been super happy with the quality of films and what the stories that they're telling. But I've seen Oppenheimer, which I loved. I've seen Barbie.
Okay.
Dune.
How did you like Dune?
Dune 2? Well, I like.
I mean, honestly, I want your thoughts about both.
I wasn't sure about Dune 1.
Okay.
I love Dune 2.
Ugh.
But
have I already given you an earful, Tom, about
I haven't heard
about Dune 2?
give us
Oh
an
my
earful.
God. I gave some people an earful about Dune 2
Oh.
before I give anyone else an earful about Dune 2, but you liked it. Yeah, break that down.
Well, I think it was the problem was that I waited too long to watch Dune 1. So when I did watch Dune 1, because I was in the middle of reading the book when Dune 1 came out. I think, I don't know, over Christmas of a couple of years ago.
Is that 2021?
I believe
I
so.
think so. I was like, I'm gonna finish Dune 1 before I see the movie. But then by the time I finished Dune 1, it was out of theaters, and I had never gotten around to it until recently.
Okay.
So I had too much of a chance, I think, to solidify what I believed Arrakis and everything to look like in my head. So when I saw Dune 1, I was kind of unimpressed by the style and like with the way they dreamed up Arrakis and the way they dreamed up the Harkonnens. I was like, that's not what I imagined it to be. No. And so it was kind of weird to like, because some things are really good, like the Reverend Mother in Dune 1, I thought was really good and was better than what I had imagined.
Okay.
But like the way that they did Arrakis and things like that, I was like, I was a little like underwhelmed.
You were pretty lukewarm. Okay.
And I was kind of lukewarm about Timothée Chalamet's like portrayal of Paul Atreides, because in the book he's 15, so he's a little bit more pugnacious, but in the second one, I had been able to warm up to this world and this adaptation of this world, so I was more willing to enter into like, okay, like this is the world that you have decided, and then for whatever reason, I just liked the Paul Atreides more, like the portrayal of Paul Atreides more in the second one. Zendaya's character, like Chani's actually fleshed out in the first one, which she doesn't get a chance to be in the second one. She doesn't get a chance to be in the first one. And like Stilgar and his people are more fleshed out. in the second one, there's a lot more. I mean, more happens in the second one
Mm.
than it does in the first one. The first is a lot of setup for a lot of what happens in the second one, which kind of mimics how I felt about the book. Like I was like, what are we doing in this first half of the book? And then I was like, oh, I see in the second
Right.
half.
What are you getting to here, people?
Yeah. So I really liked, I really liked Dune 2. I thought it was really good. And now I kind of want to go back and watch Dune 1 again.
Okay.
'Cause I think I might appreciate
Watch Dune 1 in light of the
Mhm.
sequel. Now you came with us, Tom, to see the sequel, right?
I unfortunately wasn't able to make that night, so I
Okay.
saw it a week later.
Okay. What do you think?
I liked it,
Okay.
but I didn't know if it lived up to the hype. I was kind of
it.
disappointed by my lack of enthusiasm. Like I didn't. I felt bad that I didn't.
You're like, I was looking for something positive in my Lent.
Because I'm trying to figure out because I felt like something was missing about it.
Mm,
I'm trying to figure out what it is,
mm,
and maybe it's just like the unanswered question of like who were the Atreides and why did they get destroyed so
Mm.
fast?
uh-huh.
And like it seems like Paul is living that through the Fremen,
Mhm.
bringing that like stately manner to the Fremen lifestyle and like kind of merging the two worlds together.
Mm,
And then like his friend was played by Josh Brolin.
Mm.
mm,
And so you kind of like see like the discipline of the army and like because like I feel like the Fremen are very Arablish. Like they have like the Arab sound, the Arab fighting style, a lot of energy but not much thought. Where
mm,
Paul is more like thought with lots of energy when he needs to. So like he's very quiet and subdued until he comes out and then he's like the best fighter.
Mm.
So I think that might have been the thing was like I was looking for more Atreides in the movie.
okay.
I don't know.
That's kind of how I felt about the first one. Like I walked away going, that was good, but what else? You know, like I wanted something else, but I couldn't tell you what I wanted. And I feel like maybe, yeah, I felt this way about Dune 1, not necessarily Dune 2, but I did feel like there's something missing and I couldn't tell you what it was, but I felt like it was fixed, whatever it was in Dune 2. Like, yeah, but I know what you mean about like kind of liking it, but not fully bought into it yet. Because that's how I felt about Dune 1.
Yeah, like maybe it was like maybe part of it too was like not knowing what had happened. It seemed like they jumped about a year ahead in Dune 2.
No,
Did they?
no, not really.
Didn't?
The whole Dune is like in medias res. Like you don't really, he kind of explains in chapter 2 of the book, like the Baron has a long chapter where he kind of explains what's going on, but you kind of don't know what's going on. Everyone's kind of out for themselves. You don't really know why the Emperor, I think you will if you read further on into the series of Dune, why the Emperor wanted to destroy the Atreides. But even in the book, you're still a little like, the Emperor doesn't like Mr. Atreides for whatever reason, but it's never super clear why he doesn't like, what's his name? Oscar Isaac's character.
Is it Leto Atreides?
Leto, yeah, Leto Atreides. You're never quite sure why he wants to destroy them, but he does, and you just kind of accept it. You're like, okay, he doesn't like him.
Well, that was interesting because in Dune, okay, I don't want to make any. Well, people, it's been out enough.
Yeah.
People, but like,
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna spoil it at this point.
Spoiler.
You forgot these buttons to them. But like the ending part when Paul was kind of asking the Emperor, "Why did you kill my dad and my whole race?" And he was like, "Well, your dad had heart, and that's not how you rule." Paul was almost like, "Oh yeah, watch this." Like,
Oh, do you think he had a heart at that point?
I think so.
Oh.
I think he had a.
Please.
I don't know.
I profoundly disagree.
Oh, okay.
But please finish your thought.
Set up the stage for a good discussion here. Like, because I was talking with Ranger a lot about this because he's been he kind of nerded out about Dune. You know how he is like he somehow understands everything all at once about something. But you're saying like Paul essentially becomes everything they've all feared. So
Mm,
he becomes leader of the Fremen, the ruler of Arrakis, and the Emperor.
mm,
So he's like the big boy, like,
mhm,
and he's the youngest of them all. You shouldn't have been here. This prophecy was quote unquote made up, but he
mhm.
lived it out somehow.
Yeah.
So they're all like, what is he? Like, is he actually the thing that did we just
Mhm.
stumble upon this prophecy?
Yeah.
But the reason I think he has heart is because I don't think he would have told Chani what he said if he didn't have heart.
Okay, but he did basically say, Chani, I love you, but I'm gonna marry her instead. Like he basically like in earlier in the film, he promised Chani that A, he wouldn't take over, and B, he would love her forever.
Mm.
And he breaks both of those promises to Chani in his actions at the end of the story, where he's like, I will always love you forever, which means nothing if you don't have the actions behind it to like back that up. And I felt this way when I read the book. I was like, Paul, what the heck? Because he then turns and like makes, and I guess it makes sense politically, like in the royalty households, like, yeah, you probably don't marry what would be like consistent with a peasant woman. You marry royalty and you carry on that way. But I thought in that situation, I was like, maybe this is the one path forward, but it was highly unfair to Chani and very dishonest with what he had told her previously.
Hmm.
And interesting, Chani's different in the movie than she is in the book.
Hmm.
So the way that they wrote Chani and Zendaya's character in the movie is not the reaction she has in the book, which is interesting.
Mm.
Because in the book, she goes, okay. And it's kind of just becomes like angrily becomes his concubine. Whereas Denis Villeneuve has her leave,
Hmm.
which I felt like she should have done. Like in the book, I was like, Johnny, don't just accept that, move out. Like, no. Um, but yeah, I that's why I disagree with it, because he said he wouldn't and then he did. But I don't know. Why do you disagree, Jonathan?
Yeah.
I'm interested in.
Yeah. I mean, no, I love the first one. I truly did. And I think actually, if I were to, I think it was because it had the character of Leto Atreides.
Mm,
There, it was like what I loved about the first one, and why I found it so poignant and tragic, is because Leto dies,
mhm,
right? But you again, I'm speaking specifically to the movies. I recognize that there may be differences between the movies and the book, but I got the sense in the movie characterization that this was a man who really was the closest to a real hero, in the sense
mm,
that he put others before himself, and had a sense of he had a sense of honor, he had a sense of duty, and he had a selflessness.
mhm,
And my two complaints about the second one were from a storytelling perspective. I think between what Frank Herbert himself said about his own story, and I think what Denis Villeneuve actually does capture in the movie, is that it becomes just a chess game. It becomes a chess game for power.
mm,
Paul surrenders his sort of his moral stances. I'm not going to go become a cult leader, essentially, because I think that would lead to harm for many people. Well, this is the one path forward, so I am going to go
mm,
become a cult leader. And so in the second Dune movie, I remember watching it and thinking, he we are without the hero now, right? We frankly, we still have a protagonist, right? Like, we'd
mhm,
prefer to see Paul win than the Harkonnen villains, but we have the clear villains, these people who are ugly and are dressed in black all the time and are really creepy versus what is essentially a good-looking villain,
Mhm.
right? And they're all involved in this chess game. And I remember watching this movie and thinking, oh, this is such a tragedy, because now we have we are watching a story about a chess game between villains, some of whom are more aesthetic than the others. Right.
No,
Right.
but to push back on that a little bit, I agree that's how it ends up, but that's not how it starts, and that's not necessarily the way Paul wants it to end up. Because
Mm,
Paul really does try to fight this, and I think they made it more clear in the movie than they do in the book,
okay.
that Paul really does try to fight the urge to be this thing. He doesn't want to be the Al Isan Gaib. He doesn't want them to think that. He tries not to portray. In the book, he kind of stokes it.
Okay.
He like is a little drunk on the fact that they think he's the Messiah. So he's kind of like, oh, okay, like he'll try something here, and then Chani will like chide him, and he'll be like, oh, you're right. Try something over here. And she's like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, you're right. So he's like kind of in the book, he's kind of exploring
He's
the
playing.
reaches of what being a Messiah really can get you
Right.
and the control. And he like uses the voice more
Mm,
for petty things than he does in the movie
mm.
when because he's a child, he's 15. Like he's just kind of drunk on being important.
Oh, geez. I mean, that's
But in the movie, I think they play it far more
drunkenness.
as like he's really trying not to take over. Like he really does want the Fremen to
Take
take back
like their
on their
planet.
own.
Mm,
And he would love to help them, but he doesn't want to take over from Stilgar, from Chani, from the Fremen
mm,
until until he thinks there's nowhere else that this can lead.
mm,
And I think that's an interesting tragic moment because it's like he's a good guy up until the moment he takes the water of life. Like
mm,
he's but once he makes that decision, he's going on a path that he cannot alter.
mhm,
And once you know the knowledge of all things,
mm.
like
Yeah,
then the ends
he
justify the
really
means.
eats the apple, doesn't he? Yeah,
Mhm.
he becomes a knower of good and evil.
Because maybe that's right. Maybe that's not right. Like maybe it was just an hallucination. Maybe it wasn't really the way forward. But who are we to know? You know, like
Right.
it's kind of like you're up to the interpretation of Paul.
Okay.
And I think that's because Paul's very likable up until the point where he drinks.
Mm,
And then he becomes tyrannical.
hmm.
And he's like, nope, 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 no. I know what I'm doing. Da 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 da.
Power.
And he saves Arrakis,
Hmm.
but at what cost?
Mm.
Like, I don't know.
It's almost like he was telling everyone this isn't a good idea. And like his mom and Stilgar and everyone else kept saying, we gotta do this. This is what we need.
Mhm.
And then at the end, he's like, okay, fine. Like, if
Yeah.
you really want this, then I'll do it.
Mm.
You don't know what you're asking for.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they get it, they're like, oh, shoot. Because, like, at the
Yeah.
end, when, he kills Fade Rotha, and then the other Bene Gesserit looks at her and she's like, well, you were right. Like, did she say we chose the wrong side?
Mhm.
And then his mom was like, there are no sides. So that was interesting because then I think his mom started to realize that she might have made the wrong decision too.
Well, because like his mom was kind of like the kingmaker in a sense. But the weird thing and the funny thing about history is you read people who create kings, they can never control the king. They can control them up until the point they become king. But then once they have all ultimate power, the kingmakers tend to get killed pretty quickly because the king knows that they're a puppet master. Therefore, like Cromwell, like Oliver Cromwell in the English, like he got killed by one of the people he put on the throne because they recognized he is a spider. We're going to get rid of him. He put me in power, but we're going to get rid of him. So I think,
I don't want him messing around in the background.
yeah. When Paul could be controlled, when she could teach him, when he could be controlled, when he was still unsure, then I think Jessica was far more like, oh, this could work. This could totally work. But when you see someone with ultimate power making decisions, and you're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have given a 15-year-old boy ultimate power or encouraged that. Um, yeah, I think you can't control people, which I think that's the ultimate hubris of the Benny Gesserit is they think, and they've been manipulating history forever, but they can't control Paul now. And they could control Federatha with the way that Benny Gesserit was like, oh, he can be controlled with seduction and with power and violence and all that. They knew what they could do with him. They didn't know what they could do with Paul because he was such a wild card. You don't necessarily want to give a wild card ultimate power if you still want to control them.
Hmm.
Which, yeah.
And the interesting thing is, if the other houses didn't object right away,
Mm.
it might have been all fine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was almost like if they actually sat down and talked with Paul about what they wanted, he probably was like, "Yeah, that sounds great. I
Yeah.
don't really want to go to war.
Awesome.
Got stabbed a couple times. I want to
Mm.
take a break. Needed to go talk to Chani a little bit here. Like,
Yeah, I need to go explain myself.
Yeah, trying to patch this up a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
Nope. Let's do the warships.
yeah. Like,
Hmm.
yeah. I think it was their. Oh, it's interesting. Whose fault is it? I feel like it's the other house's fault for not talking because they just saw Atreides get blown up
Mm.
by the Emperor. It's kind of alluded as the Emperor doing.
Yeah. And then they kind of acquiesce to it.
Yeah, and it's like, well, wait a minute. If he just overcame the Emperor that killed his people, shouldn't you want to talk to him a little bit first and then just saying, no, like
Hmm.
he shouldn't be Emperor? It's like, well, he did it fairly based on the rules.
Yeah. The rules of it.
So I mean, it just so
Yeah.
happened that he got everything that they said he shouldn't have.
Mm-mm.
They all got it the right way. Like
Yeah, he
came-
challenged the person who killed them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
like he led the Fremen. He
Yeah.
became one of them based on their rights, and then therefore, since he like the Atreides are gone, and he defeats the Iraqan,
Mm-hmm.
and no, the Harkonnen.
The Harkonnen.
Harkonnen,
Yeah.
yeah.
Harkonnen.
I know.
So he gets rid of them, and then so they're bad. Everyone knows they're bad guys,
Mm-hmm.
and in doing so, he also becomes a new emperor. It's like we did everything right, so maybe we should actually give him what he got.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of won it all. Like he didn't just steal it like the emperor was trying to do with Arrakis. He's trying to steal it for himself. So I think it was the house's fault for not acquiescing to be like, well, yeah, he actually did it the way we set it up.
Yeah, but if you were the head of a house
Yeah.
and some upstart tricks the emperor into like the situation where he can't escape without getting killed or something like that, would you necessarily be like, sure, have the emperorship? Because all those houses are angling for the emperorship. Everyone wants to be emperor. So do you think as one of those other houses, knowing the power of the Sardaukar and what the emperor can elicit, would you just want to give that to a child, basically?
Well, I don't think I'd want to just say we're at war right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would definitely want to take a little bit of time to figure out what
Mhm.
our like. I mean, they probably did it for
What
Carlos.
actually happened down there on what happened?
Yeah.
What happened down on their planet rather than
Mhm.
That was the first time was it the Stildegor
The Sardaukar?
Sardaukor were defeated, right?
Yeah, because they're like an undefeatable army or like something like that, which is funny because they get defeated quite a bit, being undefeatable. Like because the Atreides do get annihilated, but they do take out quite a few Sardaukar in the process, in the first part of Dune.
Hmm.
And Duncan, Idaho,
Duncan Idaho?
Jason Momoa,
Yeah,
so
he's great.
good. No, but that's interesting. I have never thought about it from that perspective because I've only thought about it from like not I've never thought it from the house's perspective. But I bet what
You're up
they're
there orbiting the
thinking.
planet. You're orbiting the planet with your fleet, and then some message comes up that says, "Hey, I defeated the Emperor. You need to respect my claim to the throne."
But
You're
the
like, "What? Whoa, 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 whoa!
yeah, like wait up.
What happened?"
We're beaming down, Scotty.
Yeah, exactly. Like, wait, hold on. But I think probably what they're thinking is that if the emperor can annihilate the House Atreides, what could Paul do if he becomes emperor? And realizes that all of the houses, which I believe all the houses understood and kind of acquiesced and like kind of tacitly like looked away from the annihilation of the Atreides.
Mm.
So everyone was kind of in on that issue. So Paul becoming emperor, they're not just going to be like, okay, because knowing that the emperor could annihilate a house, they were positively sure Paul could retaliate and probably would retaliate if he retaliated against the emperor. So it's probably why they immediately said, no, we're not accepting you. Because if they did, it was 50-50 whether Paul would actually treat them well or treat them like hostiles and like try to do what he did with the emperor with them.
Yeah. Well, I guess the thing is like he only did it to the emperor because he killed his dad and everyone else. Like,
Yeah, but the houses were in on it.
that's true. So maybe Paul isn't the tyrant. Because if they were all trying to destroy one house because they're afraid of one guy, and he's the son of that guy, and then he like pretty much goes against all odds, defeats them, the
I know.
emperor, and they're like, well, shoot, our plan didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna keep going with this plan. Then maybe they're at fault because they're the ones causing. They essentially made Paul Atreides,
Mm-hmm.
so maybe he isn't a tyrant. They just think of him as one because he's actually able to wield the power that they want, but they have been trying to steal.
Spies.
Man, that's an interesting twist.
No, Dune's an interesting book and an interesting story.
Yeah.
Because I think it does take the hero tale and upend it. Because you're rooting for Paul most people are rooting for Paul up until the end. And you're like, whoa, okay. I don't know about this Paul. But it's an interesting, like, yeah, it's an interesting
Mhm.
becoming a hero or becoming a tyrant.
Hmm.
Are they similar? You never think about the heroes being tyrants in like old fairy tales and things because you just on the side of that
You
person.
should be king. But
Obviously.
then you realize a king has a measure of control. That the villain and the king, right? The villain wants some control. The king wants some control. Yeah, it's different than someone who I just exist for the good of all. No, like no. If you're going to become king, that means you have power over people, and hopefully in a benevolent way.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily the case that people can live totally how they please under a king.
Yeah.
And that might be a good thing, but nonetheless, let's face it, a king takes unto himself something that may not be willingly given from every side.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, it's interesting because it kind of reminds me of our conversation with Father, talking about the Christian war, how it's to be very deadly, but his morals are what control him. So that's almost like the difference between a tyrant and a hero. I actually heard this put really
Sorry,
well.
what's very deadly, Tom?
A Christian warrior.
Uh-huh.
He has to be because he has to defeat
Right.
the things that are causing harm. So he has to be
He has to
more
be
deadly than them to
right.
stop them. But that doesn't mean that he's like them.
Hmm.
So he can wield the
Interesting.
same weapon, but he does it for the right reason.
Oh, weird. Okay.
Yeah.
I've never thought about it like that.
Isn't that cool?
Ooh, that brings up so many questions in my mind.
It's like Batman versus Bane or Arkham Knight. Both pretty much same ability to use weapons, but one is good and one is bad. I actually heard this on Sunday. It was a really interesting talk from Alex Hormozy, and he was talking about how the difference between a villain and a hero is that they both have excruciating pain, but the villain uses it as a reason to cause more pain because he's been hurt. The villain says, I'm going to use this pain so no one else feels it like I do.
The hero.
Yeah.
The hero uses it.
So the hero uses his pain to protect others from that pain and is willing to bear it for others, where the villain wants to just spread it everywhere.
If I've felt this, then therefore in justice, everyone must feel it.
Yeah, because I've been hurt so badly, then why should anyone else have a better life than me? Kind kind of like what the Satan does. He's like, well, I lost everything, but it's his choice.
Mhm.
And then he's like, I want to take it away from everyone else now
Mm.
too. Where, the saint, Christ, he shows us that I've probably been hurt more than he has. Probably because I've been rejected by people I love.
Mhm.
So now, but I'm going to use that pain to bring life to everyone.
Mm.
So it's really interesting. Like the
Yeah.
hero villain dynamic is like they both have tons of pain, but it's how
Mhm.
they channel it and use it
Mm.
will bring about either like the dark world or the light world.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting. It's so meta, but it's so cool to think about.
Mm.
Well, the difference between a hero and a villain is not that big.
No,
Yeah. Which
it's
is,
usually one decision too.
yeah, it's terrifying how small of a decision it could be,
Yeah.
too. Like, yeah. Because you're both shooting for a good ultimately. Like they both have a perceived good in their head. One good is good for everyone versus one good is good for them. And that's the difference between a hero and a villain. But they still think they're doing something good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
Terrifying.
sometimes the creepy thing in movies is when you hear the villain talk. And if you just heard him talk, you're
You're
like, well, he sounds pretty convincing.
Yeah, yeah. You're like, all right, I could get
Guy's
behind
making some
this.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, I could get behind all this. Yeah.
Mm.
But it's like that saying, I don't know if you've heard Jordan Peterson say this, that he said like the reason we can believe in heaven is because we can look at hell.
Mm.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Interesting idea, because it's like his philosophy is that you have to look at evil enough so that you believe there's still good.
Interesting.
And when you're
You have to
trying
look at evil enough to say this cannot be the end. This cannot be
Exactly.
the whole story.
Yeah.
Because if this is the whole story, we might as well just kill ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm.
Because if this is the story, then life is really not worth living.
Mm-hmm. And by recognizing that, then you actually turn towards what's good.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like you acknowledge what can be bad, but by doing that, you're almost able to understand what can be good too.
Mm.
Mm.
Right.
So
You see the terrible alternative and say
yeah,
the alternative is so terrible. We must act that it not come to pass.
hmm
Mm.
yeah, but it's almost like the best heroes are the ones that have seen it all.
Mm.
They
Mm-hmm.
all know what it is,
Mm.
Yeah.
and then they like say no,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like the turning point.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Batman was, he's kind of like the epitome of what everyone thinks of like the hero that embraces the dark side
Mm.
Mm.
to bring about good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The anti-hero.
But he's like, I mean, the legend of Batman is like he never kills anybody,
Mm.
but everyone is terrified of him.
Yeah.
Like, well, why are you terrified of someone that won't kill you? It's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. It's like, but he could if he wanted to, and that might be the scary
Yeah.
thing.
The power, self-restraint.
Yeah, like he's so skilled at what he does that you probably won't be able to win against him. So you probably lose your evil plan, and that's why you're scared
Mm.
because he'll find you and stop you.
Interesting.
Mm.
I don't know, but I feel like these parallels are a lot with like Paul Atreides and that like he sees what can happen, but he's almost like, well, it seems like it's almost his duty to keep going forward. But he doesn't really want to,
Mm.
Mm.
but he does the right things in the right ways so that he actually gets it.
But he does the right things in the right ways within one system, but not within the system of the Fremen. Like the Fremen are an independent people of Arrakis that are not having really nothing to do with the houses, with the emperor.
Mhm.
They just happen to be the people who live on the planet that produces a spice that creates intergalactic space travel. They have no say. So they are not a part of the system within which the rules Paul Atreides is playing.
Mm.
And I would say that if they were a part of the houses,
Mm.
I would agree with you that Paul is playing the game, quote unquote, that everyone plays. The Fremen have nothing to do with that. The Fremen are people who should be the ones dealing with the spice trade and should be the ones like operating that on Arrakis because that is their planet. but they have no say in it. And Paul is playing a game that they are not a part of. So I think that interplay of like there's a game within a game and then there's no game. But they have no say versus these two people who are playing a game that they don't not that they don't understand, they understand it well, but they just don't want to be a part of. They're like, we don't, this is not what we signed up for. We got conquered by the Harkonnens. We've been conquered for a long time. We've been fighting back, consistent resistance. And now this guy comes in promising, like, I will help you get your liberty, and then doesn't really give them liberty. Sort of liberates them from the Harkonnens, but doesn't liberate them from the actual system upon which they are actually rebelling. Because the Harkonnens are a symptom.
The Harkonnens were trying to stamp them out.
Yeah.
Fine. But you're saying Paul comes along and says, first, I'm trying to free you, but by the end of the second movie, he's just co-opting them into his greater war. Right.
Yeah.
And that represented them. They were all getting onto the warships to go up into the orbit and fight the houses.
He's using
like,
all of the people who believe in him. He's using them to fight his war that is not necessarily their war. Their war was against the Harkonnens and to establish their own independence on their own planet of Arrakis. Like if he had created like Stilgar, you are now the director of spice production or whatever, and we're going to go back to Caladan and we're going to deal with the situation there. That would be a fulfillment of his oath. And if Stilgar then with his people said, no, we want to do this with you, we want to become a house, like whatever, if like Stilgar want to enter into the system, that's on them. That's not on Paul. But the fact that he kind of uses his sway over Stilgar and his people, he's still using them that are not a part of the system, will not benefit from the system as a catalyst to propel the system forward. And that I think is like the issue.
Could the argument be made though that the houses would try to reconquer Arrakis if the Fremen didn't fight along with Paul?
Oh, for sure. But that doesn't mean that it's good for the Fremen.
Right.
Like, yeah, it's good in short term because, yeah, probably someone would conquer them. But as far as like their goal of liberating their people, they're not really being liberated. Which is why Chani leaves, because she sees that like he's using the beliefs of her people that were insidiously interwoven by the Bene Gesserit in general for his own ends that are not the Fremen's ends and that are not in Arrakis's
best
benefit.
interest.
Yeah.
They basically go from the Harkonnens' attempt to eradicate them, and then at the end, Paul Atreides prostitutes them. Right. Right. It's like, at first, the Harkonnens thought of you as troublesome pests. I think of you as useful tools, but neither of us think of you as people with your own worth and your own dignity.
Yeah. I think you have to think of it like that. Otherwise, why would? Because that's what freaks out Paul is he's like, I see a world where there's a holy war and thousands are dying. And he's freaked out by that. He doesn't want thousands to die. But by the end of it, he's willing to sacrifice thousands of lives to fight a holy war that may or may not be so holy, Like, because it's all somewhat of a story that the Bene Gesserit have created. So, I mean, it starts on the level of manipulation. The Bene Gesserit have been manipulating history forever. And so when you start on a level of manipulation, you're most likely not going to get it great. It's not going to be a benefit.
Yeah, right. By the fruits you shall know.
Natural effect. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the Bene Gesserit are just an interesting character in general. But yeah.
They're very interesting.
They're weird.
They be weird.
They be weird.
Yeah. It is interesting, Maddie. I mean, it seems that we were talking earlier on our way back from Jackson. I mean, my chief complaint about Dune 2 Sorry, maybe not chief complaint. My complaint about movie making, actually, you supported. I felt that in, frankly, the last 2/3, last half, depending on how you splice it. I felt that the movie was trying to get through so much material
Mm.
in a limited time, which I respect any movie maker who's like, well, I got to respect my audience and not try to like and not like indulge myself in a 3.5 hour movie, right? So I respect that. I really truly do. But I just remember sitting through Dune 2 and just watching these gorgeous scenes in the first third of the movie, right? Where it just seemed like the director felt like he had the time to pay attention to the last, again, 2/3 to half, where I was like, man, we are just plowing through material. Where I was like, even like basics, like even some basic setup scenes, I feel like are being skipped over.
Mm.
And then the scenes like are just, there's this huge battle between sandworms and there's like the mightiest army in the universe. And it lasts like literally 24 seconds.
I was so disappointed.
I was like,
I just thought I was like 15 minutes of battle. Let's go.
Yeah.
I mean,
Uh,
yeah, I just remember sitting there being like, would you slow down? I guess, and again, let me say again, I respect a movie maker who doesn't overindulge himself. But I just remember sitting there thinking, me like, this is 2 movies crammed into one. Like,
Mm.
could we really not make this 2 movies? But and then you got, you think back a while ago, and they had what was the last Twilight movie? Twilight, the
Breaking Dawn.
yeah,
1 and
Breaking
2.
Dawn Part 1, Breaking Dawn Part 2, you know what I mean? And it was this total it was this total sellout for more movie sales. I'm like, dang, here's a movie maker and material that really deserves more time.
Mm.
And by golly, they only give us 2.5 hours. And I just remember thinking, I'm just going too fast. I can't even see really the structure, the underlying of this story.
Yes.
But this was my little rant. I will take even my own rant with a grain of salt.
Mhm.
But you say you actually appreciated the
Mhm.
pace at the second half.
Yeah. Well, because like if you think about it, when you're planning a battle,
Mhm.
a lot goes into the planning and you're talking about it a lot and you're trying to figure out your enemy and you're trying to figure out yourselves and you're trying to figure out all these things. But when the battle actually happens, you don't see it.
Uh-huh.
And many people in history have said that. And I think like that's what a lot of War and Peace is about, is like the great
Mhm.
man theory of like, does great men move history or do the pawns,
Mm.
quote unquote, move history? The ones in the front line,
Yeah.
are they moving history because the great man is having all these ideas that never get to the front line?
Mm.
Do they care or are they just doing what they're told? And I think
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
second half just kind of shows that. It's
Yeah,
like,
Tolstoy's great epilogue, where he's like, yeah,
Mhm.
Napoleon was really not even at the helm of history at a certain point.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I think the same can be said of Dune is like, yeah, sandworms are awesome, but I think that's what I dislike about like Marvel movies is they
mm,
overindulge in the fight scenes. It's like, oh my gosh, can we stop? Like, it's cool. Jeremy Renner's great with an arrow. Can we please stop? Like, can we please move on with the subject matter? And I
mm,
think with Dune, I just think it feels like what battle might be like.
uh-huh.
It's all just kind of all happening at the same time. You're not sure, and you see some signals, and you're like, all right, that's our sign. And then you go, and then it just all comes to a head, and it might end super quickly, and it might not. It depends. But that's what I kind of liked about the pacing of Dune was that I was worried we weren't going to get out on time because we were on a time schedule. And I was like, oh my gosh, they have so much they have to
Right. You were
do,
like, man,
and we
thank
have
you, Denis
45 minutes.
Villeneuve. Yeah.
But then everything happened in the last half hour that I was like, okay, well, great, we got it in. But it also didn't bother me because it felt like that might be what it actually is like. Like
Mm,
so much planning goes into the execution that might be half an hour.
mm,
And Paul probably doesn't know what's all happening. Because you never know what's all happening on different fronts of war. Like,
mm.
things are happening and the leader never quite knows the whole story until everything is over.
Right. I remember a Navy SEAL telling me that. He's like, man, plans are great. And you got to plan.
Plans.
And then the first shot happens and the plan all goes to hell.
Mhm.
He's like, you have to plan. But the plan isn't actually what happens.
That's kind of like directing, going back to live theater.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
Right.
It can get derailed,
Right.
and you're just trusting that the people know what they're doing
Yeah.
to get it back on track.
Yeah.
So,
Mm.
yeah, it's like, yeah, that's why I really liked, because it kind of gave the hecticness of like what a war zone might actually be like.
Mm.
Like you're following Paul, but like what Stilgar is doing, what Chani is doing, you don't really know what they're doing or how they're progressing or what their front is doing because Paul doesn't really know.
Uh-huh.
And does Paul really care? That's a question mark.
It's a question
I
mark.
don't know.
I know. I felt like the director for Dune 2 just hit us over the head like Bilbo in the Battle of the Five Armies. Like, don't like you're done. You wake up and like, oh man, I missed out.
Damn, it's over. All right. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Maddie, unfortunately, we are also bound by the limits of time.
Time and interest.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. I mean, it's great to have you
having me.
back on the podcast, and you're doing some really amazing work out there on the West Coast. And we really only hope that as soon as it's over, you can come back and join us again for another conversation this summer.
I'll do.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll have a lot more to talk about.
Time.
So
Yeah. Thank
perfect.
you. It's been fun.
It was.